how the new dispensation was passed with Comrade Douglas Mahia. We also call him affectionately Mukanya. He's the Secretary, the War Veterans, ex-detainees and refugees to the Politburo. He's also currently the head of the War Veterans Wing. As you might be aware that the party resolved in its previous People's Conference to create a War Veterans League. So he's the leader of that league as it stands. Then of course, next to him, needs no introduction again, is the acting spokesperson of the party, ZANU, Comrade Patrick Chinamasa, and the men who will be giving us this special brief. Next to me, of course, is Comrade Mike Nima, the Secretary for Indigenization and Economic Empowerment in the party. Comrade Mike Nima needs no introduction again to you. And of course, yours truly. Let me just say, this is a special press brief. And I'm sure in the fullness of time, we'll be giving you this special brief weekly from the party, for the simple reason that it is from these headquarters and this part where the national leadership resides and where the national narrative is driven from. At least to say that when you stray and engage in similar events, Comrade the acting spokesperson with those who would want people to believe they are our foes or that they are our counterparts in the opposition, some of whom are still homeless as it stands for the reasons that you can speculate about. We reiterate that this is the home of the People's Revolution. It is from this home of the People's Revolution that the national narrative is shaped, developed, driven, and engineered for. So without wasting much of your time, may I take the baton to the acting spokesperson of the party, Comrade Chinamas, to give you the brief. It's over to you, Comrade Spokesperson.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you, members of the Fourth Estate, who hold governments and authorities to account in the discharge of their responsibilities. We respect that responsibility. We respect it for as long as you do and keep to holding government and authorities to account, and you do not do other things which are outside the ethics of your profession. As the director has already mentioned, I will give two statements actually. One a lengthy one, then another one, a short one, to do with the U.S. ambassador to Zimbabwe. I also promise that on a weekly basis, we are going to be giving you press briefs where we will give you opportunity to ask us in the leadership anything that you want concerning ZANU-PF and the country. After my reading of the speeches of the statement, I'll give you an opportunity to ask questions on the statement or on any other issue. And my colleagues here, who have been introduced to you, will assist me where I need that assistance. So allow me now to read the statement. It's a special press brief on the MDC Alliance's planned demonstrations and protests on the 31st of July 2020. Following repeated threats by the MDC Alliance, its appendages, supporters, and external financiers to call for a violent demonstration on the 31st of July 2020 against COVID-19 lockdown regulations with the intention to overthrow a constitutionally elected government. ZANU-PF is a revolutionary mass party which carries the mandate of the people following its resounding victory in the 2018 general elections, feels obligated to make this direct appeal to our people. As the ruling party, ZANU-PF advises our people to shy away from being misled onto a deadly path by merchants of death, who have no interest in the safety and security of our people, and regrettably, no interest whatsoever in the general welfare of our people. ZANU-PF calls upon our people to reject imposters like the MDCA alliance, which masquerades as a democratic political party, but which, since its formation, has thrown the interests of the country and the people to the dustbin in favor of furthering neo-colonial interests, which our people and the party fought to defeat. This is why I came flanked by my colleague here, Comrade Mahia, just to demonstrate, to make it very clear that we defeated the enemy, but the enemy continues to rear its head, not directly this time, but through our own people. As we unpack and unbundle in this special press brief, the MDCA Alliance and its predecessors, the MDCT and MDC, are Trojan horses and foreign-funded creatures whose sole purpose was to oppose, reverse, and disrupt the land reform program, and to undermine economic emancipation and empowerment of our people. For the record, the DNA of the MDC Alliance, its appendages, supporters, and external financiers, is a violent, anti-revolutionary, and mercenary neo-colonial outfit. And I give below its history and its true political colors and values. The MDC and its runner-dogs in the evil society. Last time I used the word deliberately, evil society. The media corrected it, thought that I made a mistake to say civil. I mean evil society. Any organization which wishes the death of its population is not civil, is the opposite, is actually evil. So this evil society are founded and founded by the British Westminster Foundation. And this was done to oppose the land redistribution program and to delay the complete decolonization of our country. As you are all aware, our decolonization was not complete at independence. Deliberately so, we decided and we had agreed that we will finalize and take back our land in a negotiated manner. It never came to pass. This organization was founded not to pursue and advance our people's national interests, but those of unrepentant ex-Rhodesians and former colonizers. Soon after its formation, the MDC, in response to the will of their creators, they asked for the imposition of illegal sanctions against this sovereign republic and the people, including their own blind followers. What the MDC does not know is that sanctions affect their supporters as well as ZANU-PF supporters. They don't know that. They are not as educated to see the deep meaning of their actions. And all this in order to reverse the land reform program, which has been set in motion to empower, not just to empower all our people, everybody. Again, this is not appreciated because they are just an agent of a foreign hand. The same MDC factions today globe-trotters, liaising for the continuation and extension of the same illegal sanctions which have been roundly condemned by the civilized world as an act of war against our innocent people. You journalists should take opportunity to ask them, where do they get money to globetrot, to sleep in the most expensive, luxurious hotels, asking for sanctions against their own people? Where do they get the resources from? These are questions that the media should be asking them. You are not just responsible for accounting government, but also political parties which are aspiring to rule, to get into government. This fact cannot be controverted that the Globetrotter asked for sanctions. All these have been done under the false cover of fighting for human rights in order to mislead the international community. Here we have the MDC, they emulate countries which impose sanctions. In itself a violation of very basic human rights of our people. Here we have MDC which emulates sanctions imposed in countries which have no respect in their own jurisdictions on the lives of black people. This is why we have organizations which say Black Lives Matter. They forget that they are blacks. They forget that those who are oppressed in the United States elsewhere are black people. They have no regard for that. Now, what values are they seeking to import and practice in our country? Why can't they see for themselves that they are being misled? That there is no truth whatsoever in the United States propagating human rights elsewhere, when in fact they cannot practice such human rights in their own countries against their own population. And I think the video of George Floyd, you are all aware of that, how a human being, a black person, is treated like he's just an animal, like he's a rat. The same party also, the MDC, under the late Morgan Tsvangirai, and I repeat this again and again to show the true DNA of MDC. Tsvangirai tore his party's own constitution to make illegal appointments of 2 additional vice presidents. These are the people who call themselves Democrats, yet they have no respect of their own constitution. How can they be trusted to respect the national constitution, I ask? Isn't this daylight hypocrisy? As if that is not enough, in 2018, one of the illegally appointed vice presidents violently usurped power following the death of Tsvangirai. To this day, it is known fact that Chamisa resorts to violence to gain political mileage within the MDCs, in full glare of the same Western embassies that clamor for human rights but have never uttered a word in condemnation of the violence perpetrated by its surrogates. He has used hooligans to intimidate opposition players and nearly burned down his political rival, Thokozani Kupe, at a funeral. This cannot go and continue unchallenged. Zimbabweans who ignore this violent streak in the MDCs will not have anyone but themselves to blame if they follow and pursue violent outfits and personalities. The law will be applied without fear or favor. Like I said last time, if they don't respect the law will not respect them. Now, ahead of the 2018 harmonized elections, Chamisa and cohorts led a crusade of violent speeches during the campaign, threatening an imminent post-electoral violence in direct contrast to President E.D. Mnangagwa's call for peace, tolerance, love, unity, and violence-free elections. Go to the campaign speeches of our president and of Chamisa. Chamisa is spewing out violent threats. Our president is talking peace because he knows the consequences of violence, having been and he being an armed soldier himself. He knows what are the consequences of violence. Death will ensue. Throughout his campaign, Chamisa repeated the infamous anecdote, and I repeat, ndiri kudira jecha musadza racho, toona kuti munoridya sei kana ndisina kuhwina. which literally meant that the MDC would engage in acts of sabotage and make the country ungovernable, something that is beginning to unfold. And addressing a rally at Mukoba Stadium in Gweru on the 23rd July 2018, again Chamisa went on to say that, and I want to quote, "I will be serious. There will be serious consequences if my will does not prevail." End of quote. Addressing another rally at Gerera Growth Point in Zaka on the 14th, 2018, Chamisa threatened violence again, saying, and I quote, "I will bring into the streets guys from Baremusika who are ready for violence." End of quote. Not to be outdone, Tendai Biti, the now Vice President of MDCA Alliance, while addressing a rally in Mavuku-Tafara constituency on 26 June 2018, declared, and I quote, "The Alliance will not accept election results if ZANU-PF was the winner," again threatening violence in the event that ZANU-PF won the polls. As if that was not enough, on the morning of 1st of August 2018, the MDCA Alliance youth leader, Hapmo Chidziwa, addressed MDC Alliance youth at Harvest House, urging them to engage in acts of violence in the Harare Central Business District and to attack the ZEC offices. They hoped that they could destroy the votes and the results coming in. He also urged them to attack the National Elections Command Center, ZANU-PF offices, government buildings, and fuel stations. We were indeed attacked here, as again it happened on the 14th to the 16th of January last year. All this culminated on the 1st of August 2018. Violent protests and demonstrations aimed at stopping the counting of ballots. We remind our people that voting ended on the 31st of July 2018, and before the results were counted, MDC had put its hooligans on the streets the following day in order to disrupt the counting of votes and defeat the purpose of the elections. Following the 1st of August 2018 violent demonstrations, His Excellency President E.D. Mnangagwa saw it fit to appoint an international commission of inquiry led by former South African President Kgalema Motlanthe. The Motlanthe Commission found the MDC Alliance culpable of the loss of life and destruction of property which accompanied the 1st of August 2018 violence, as the party was found to be coordinating the violence to overturn the electoral outcome, which the MDC was pretty aware were losing through their polling agents. Let me explain this. In any harmonized elections, we all agree as political parties under the superintendence of ZEC, the number of polling stations throughout the country. In the last election, I think there were probably more than 10,000. But we agree where they are to be located, specifically each polling station. At each polling station, we are all represented by our own political agents. When votes come, ballots come, polling agents, the ballots are counted and polling agents sign to acknowledge the number of ballots that have arrived at each polling station. After the voting, again, they count to see how many are left of the ballots which came. And polling agents sign for that. Then they are counted. And the results, again, are signed for by polling agents. And then pinned outside each polling station. So it is up to each polling agent to send to his command center like we do, we receive. And before the ZEC announces, we generally will be in the know where we are faring, how we are faring, how bad or how worse we are doing. And that is the situation which obtained also with the MDC alliance. The polling agents at all the polling stations who no doubt were reporting to them. So clearly they became aware that they were losing. They did. So it must be put on record that the 2018 harmonized elections were the fairest, the most transparent, peaceful, democratic elections that any country anywhere could hold. Pronouncements by the MDC alliance and its leadership that they'd won the elections, that they had evidence of manipulation and the electoral fraud proved false when this matter came to be heard before the Supreme Court. We all know that. They had no V11 forms, as they had said they had. None were produced as evidence. They had no evidence whatsoever. In fact, their legal counsel was an embarrassment in the court. Luckily, the trial on the hearing of the constitutional appeal of the MDC alliance was televised. Otherwise, they would have lied again to you that in fact the judges were manipulated. So the whole country was able to see for itself the falsehoods which were being perpetrated by MDC alliance. ZANU-PF is aware that all these efforts, including the much talked about 31st July 2020 proposed violence, follows a well-choreographed script proposed by former United States Assistant Secretary of State for Africa, Chester Crocker, whose strategy was to, and I quote, to make the Zimbabwe economy scream, end of quote, through sanctions, and in the process, I quote, separate ZANU-PF from the people. That is what all this social media hullabaloo and threats of demonstrations and protests is all about, intended to separate ZANU-PF from the people. What these detractors don't know is that ZANU-PF's relationship with the people has been watered in blood. It's unbreakable, unshakable. They don't know that. So this illegal regime change script, whose aim is to reverse the gains of our liberation struggle, in particular the land redistribution program, the party and its cadreship will never allow this to happen. Will never allow any malcontents to take over this country. Never. Further evidence of the violent streak within the MDC is when, on 6 August 2018, it said, and I quote, "We will make sure government don't get a cent." I can't tell you how, but I can tell you we have done it before. This they've succeeded. But it's very clear why they've succeeded, because they were sent to do that. They are merely pronouncing the intentions of the people who have founded and funded them. They are merely doing the bidding of those countries which impose sanctions. So it's not like he has got the power to stop money. No, no. The power is with his handlers. The same bit who is now the purported VP of MDC Alliance has recently lived to his promise to deny Zimbabwe any foreign capital by writing to Western capitals and the World Bank for further sanctions to be imposed against Zimbabwe. You know, I clearly I have respect for his intellectual prowess. Let me say that. He's very clever. But my disappointment is that he uses Maria akafundiswa neZANU-PF to undermine the revolution, to be a puppet and a sellout and a traitor to his own people. And often I wonder, how can such an intelligent person not realize that he's being duped by his handlers? It's a pity But there you are. He is doing the bidding of his masters and doing it very well, to the point where he wrote to the World Bank not to give us COVID-related financing and resources, and we have not received such resources. The MDCA Alliance treasonous disposition found expression during the 14th and 16th January 2019 orgy of violence and looting, which they organized in collaboration with non-hostile embassies fronted by the US Embassy and their evil society. The January 2019 violence were the DRS attempt made by the opposition to seize power unconstitutionally through the back door. This will not be allowed to happen again. The disturbances resulted in wanton destruction of property, mainly in Harare, Bulawayo, and largely affecting small to medium scale enterprises, some of which have never recovered from the looting, arson, and destruction to this day. This again will not happen under our watch. ZANU-PF therefore appeals to our people not to be misled by MDCA Alliance malcontents, whose preoccupation is to see our people and the economy suffer. They've mastered the art of faking and stage managing ludicrous and drama-laden abductions, alleging non-existent human rights violations such as abductions, rape, and torture in order to besmirch the reputation of government and our nation. This is a cardinal and unpardonable sin that these malcontents have committed and continue to commit. If the violent activities perpetrated by the MDC opposition were acts done in Europe or the United States of America, they would have been branded a long time ago a terrorist organization, which in fact is what they are, along with their Trojan horses like the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, the Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition, and others, which depend on foreign funding to make their anti-people activities. The MDC is seeking to win and gain through violence, what they failed to win through elections. They hope that the fake news which they are spewing out on social media will sway the population in the direction of destruction of their own country. Never, never. They want to control through media the national narrative in this country. This is what you journalists should be aware of. Don't be agents, don't be conduit pipes of the narrative of countries which impose sanctions on Zimbabwe. We must develop our own narrative, our own national narrative, without regard to the interests of foreign countries. We encourage our people to continue to observe the lockdown measures as announced by His Excellency, the President, Comrade E.D. Mnangagwa. Finally, ZANU-PF calls upon our supporters, cadres and sympathizers, wherever you are, to remain alert and ready to defend yourselves, defend our people, their property, and most importantly, defend peace in your communities against these malcontents, these hired hooligans and hoodlums who rejoice at burning properties and looting. During the August 2018 violence and the 14 to 16 January last year violence, when violence was unleashed against our people, against our supporters, they found us from Chirezi, they found us from Chipinge, they found us from Mashingo, asking for protection. we were unable to provide them that protection and safety. What we are saying to our supporters, to our people, is that they must know that when they are being attacked, the law enforcement agents may not be anywhere near the scene of crime. They must know that in those circumstances, their first line of defense is themselves and their families. They have a legal and constitutional right to defend themselves, their families, their spouses, their children, their property and possessions. Don't ask for permission from anybody. It's your constitutional and legal right. Don't be intimidated by hooligans and mercenaries. Don't be like sitting ducks as you were in August of 2018. Don't be sitting ducks as you were in January of 2019. Phoning us. No. This time, no. Use any means at your disposal to defend yourselves. And we are saying this unambiguously. We are reminding our people that self-defense is a right, especially when your security is under threat from these violent so-called protesters. End of the lengthy statement. Let me now read a special statement concerning the machinations and antics of the United States Ambassador to Zimbabwe, Mr. Brian Nicholas, and his coterie of gangsters and mercenaries who are disguised as diplomats. I want to warn them and to remind them that it is high time they get to know that Zimbabwe is a sovereign republic and we are a full sovereign state under the Montevideo Convention. The U.S. ambassador, who I'm told is African American, he must be ashamed of himself, totally ashamed of himself. What has the United States to offer by way of values and human rights observance? When his own people, his own African American people, are treated like rats in full view of world media, and he remains an Uncle Tom used by the establishment to propagate values which they themselves don't practice on their own people. Even the deaths in the United States were basically along ethical lines, indicating the poverty under which African Americans live. And this has given rise to the formation of the organization called Black Lives Matter. And here we have a black diplomat who does not understand that history, who does not understand that reality in the United States, and who has no shame, to do the bidding of the establishment, which is in contrary to the interests of his own people. He continues to engage in acts of undermining this republic, and if he does so, if he continues engaging in acts of undermining the republic, mobilizing and funding disturbances, coordinating violence, and training insurgency, our leadership will not hesitate to give him marching orders. Diplomats should not behave like thugs. And Brian Nicholas is a thug. We remind Nicholas that he is not a super diplomat in this country. There are several diplomats that are seconded to this republic from the African Union member countries and the world over. They've never masqueraded and pretended to be our prefects as Mr. Nicholas is doing. We have nothing, I want to repeat, we have nothing to learn from the United States or from those countries which impose sanctions. There are no respect of human rights. Human rights are just a pretext to oppress less powerful countries. It's just a pretext. Zimbabwe is not one of the states or provinces that make the United States of America. We fought for this country to preserve it and to protect it, not to surrender it to those from whom we tirelessly fought against. Never ever in our lifetime. I think Brian Nicholas should learn from his predecessor, Christopher Dell. He tried it, and he realized later that his shoes were too big for him. Don't dare Zimbabwe. We are waiting for you. End of statement.
Don't dare Zimbabwe. Don't dare Zimbabwe. There are no super diplomats deployed into this country. We have several of them from different countries and across the world. They have never sought to prefect this republic in the manner the U.S. ambassador is doing. And that what happened on 1 August, what also happened on 14 to 16 January 2019, it will not happen again. And that our people must exercise the right to self-defense wherever they are. The message coming from the comrade spokesperson. We open at this point in time a platform for clarification and questions. I'm sure the leadership here will be ready to answer you. There is no question that we do not have answers. We are the ruling part, then the mass part and the people's part. Yes, comrade. Identify yourself, your media out, and then you proceed to question.
Good afternoon. Cyrus and Rogers here. There is a sentiment that the government and the parties are using court restrictions to clamp down on civil liberties, such as free speech, freedom of movement. What does the party have to say to this?
I think you asked that question again last time. I am surprised that you are repeating it.
Yeah.
And I will give you the same answer that I gave then. The regulations, COVID regulations, are not affecting free speech. In fact, the aspect about free speech I'm making for the first time. COVID regulations do not affect free speech. They affect freedom of movement in order to contain the virus, the spread of the virus. This is why the lockdown measures, and we are not the only country that in fact are applying these strict measures. And we have had to introduce these stricter regulations because of the spike in the spread of virus cases. We have risen, our deaths have risen from 4, and I think they are now hovering around 34 or thereabouts in a very short period of time. And what is worrying now is that whereas in the past we had imported cases, this time around these are now local transmissions which spread faster if there are crowds. And what we are stopping here are crowds and more movement of people. We are not clamping down on freedom of speech. In fact, as you are aware, much of the incitement to violence is through the social media. isn't it? We are not. We will deal with those when 31st July happens. That will deal with them. Any incitement to violence, any incitement to overthrowing a constitutionally elected government will not be treated with kid gloves. No. So the message must go out clear to the MDCA alliance. They must not start that which they cannot finish. If they start it, if they want running battles, we are ready. Whatever they wanted to start, we are ready. Just tell them they must not start that which they cannot finish. We are prepared to go the whole hog to make sure that we are not unseated by foreign agents or foreign interests.
Don't start what you cannot finish. Key message coming there. Today we would want to thank them, Comrade Chief and Chief. They are ladies in the media as well and exercising the right to free speech. They are here too. The lady in the spectacles there, you are welcome to ask your question. Identify yourself a bit loud.
My name is TV. I just wanted to find out, since you said the spokes, you said that you're trying to deal with crowds.
With, sorry? Crowds, yes.
Yes. Already, as we all know here, the crowd buried at the ranks. Is there something that you're doing as a party? Seeing that now you want to deal with the crowd that you're anticipating, but there are already crowds at the Zuko ranks and all over the CBDs in the nation.
Yes, you know, anything that is due to indiscipline, the approach is different. It can only be through moral suasion. But where you are inviting people to congregate, it's a different story. To congregate to achieve a violent end, to achieve your goals through violent means is different. But all crowding is not encouraged. I agree. But this special crowd which you are talking about is a violent incitement to achieve a violent crowd, to achieve a violent outcome through violent means, and we will oppose it.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Just is it a follow-up? Okay,
Yes, I am aware.
Crowd that are currently there, than an anticipated crowd. That was the question.
So, to be honest, I am not sure I get
Deal
you.
with overcrowding in the buses and in the CBD.
Yes, I said that generally all that crowding is a problem of indiscipline and lack of measures to make sure that the social distancing is preserved. So what you are basically telling me, and I said so last week in my press briefing, that the urban areas are a problem. In fact, they are a time bomb in terms of COVID-19 spread, because they continue not to wear masks, they continue also to be crowding. But I'm here talking about crowding, which is incited by the MDCA alliance and their surrogates, which is funded by the US Embassy to cause violence, to overthrow a constitutionally elected government. And I'm saying we are there to meet them.
I'm sure the answer has been given. The approach differs. The approach that we are talking about, like what he has clearly outlined, hired crowds, the approach is different from crowds of people engaging for a particular service, and that is why the approach is different. I'm sure that is where the gist of the answer is. Perfect.
Thank you.
Can you proceed to identify yourself for leadership?
My name is CFO. I have two questions to the spokesperson. You seem to be speaking more of the 31st of July event. And actually, if you go on social media, it seems that people are saying is ZANU-PF is talking more of the 31st than the organizers themselves, and they are actually getting to know 31st from ZANU-PF instead. Are you in any way, as a party, afraid that 31st is going to shake the levers of power in the ZANU-PF government? Then my last question
may you be answered on that one before you proceed?
It's not true that we are the people propagating that there will be a protest on the 31st. It's the MDC and its surrogates. Chamisa and all the rest have said so many times. We are merely responding to the threats to hold protests on the 31st. So it's not true that we are the people now educating the people about 31st. It's MDC who have. And for your information, they started, funded by the US Embassy, to distribute flyers. I don't know whether you were aware. Yes, we are not aware about the 31st. So we cannot sit, we will not sit like sitting ducks. What you are asking us is just to say, to ignore and say it will not happen and do nothing. No, no, no.
In any case,
we take them seriously because it has happened before in 2018. It has happened before January last year. So we take them seriously that given their violent disposition, they will repeat it. So we are taking them seriously, and there will be a serious response from our party.
My last question is, the government and President Museveni is on record speaking of how important re-engagement is. Zimbabwe re-engaging with its former friend. Now, that being the case, your statements regarding the United States and the ambassador here, do you think that they encourage re-engagement, or has the position shifted in terms of re-engagement?
We will continue to re-engage and engage even with the enemy. More so with the enemy than with your friends. Because you want the enemy to see that what they are doing is not right. When we meet them, we tell them that they should not deploy resources to unseat constitutionally elected government. And you can only do so when you engage them. So the re-engagement policy remains. We will continue to re-engage with our enemies as well with our country, with our friends. But more with our enemies. Because if our friends already we are in a good relationship, it's not quite a re-engagement. Re-engagement is those where we had a good relationship, which over the past 20 years disappeared, and they remain in the trenches against us. They continue to this day to fund opposition to unseat us. So when we meet them, and engagement is about meeting, isn't it? About corresponding with them. We correspond and we tell them. And what I'm saying now is part of the engagement. To tell them what they are, what we find. Re-engagement is not undermined by telling the truth. Especially when they do not respect our own laws here. Diplomats have no right to come to a country and engage in subversive activities. And what we are exposing is their subversive activities. They have no right to do that.
I'm sure that has been clarified. Ladies and gentlemen, blessed, I know you. Okay, let me give you the last one, and I hope it is a civilized question. I have already prepared a favor to you when we are about to close. Like I said, we'll always be having these constant press briefs, whether there's the talk of that whatever date or whatever, we'll still continue to have them. So I thought you could preserve that one for the next, but being a good friend, I'm preparing this to you. And I hope it's come.
Thank you, Derek.
Yeah.
I just wanted to find.
Who are you?
My name is Blessed Mklang. I'm Heart and Soul TV and radio and from Newsday. So I wanted to find from Honorable Acting Spokesperson, if in the reasons that are being proffered for the 31st of July demonstration, does ZANU-PF find any genuine concerns from the citizens of the people of Zimbabwe? And what is it doing, if there are any genuine concerns, to address such concerns?
We have always addressed any shortcomings that we come across. We also are on record as fighting corruption. And I think that we have, in the past 2 years or so, not respected anyone, even those in high office. And I speak here of the arrest of ministers, Mufumira, Obodamoyo, Undenge. Those are efforts basically to fight and fulfill our mandate and our manifesto to fight corruption. So we do so. But what we don't like is hypocrisy. Like I mentioned last time, our local authorities are replete with corruption. They don't speak anything about it. They don't even incite their own population on the street to fight against corruption which is being perpetrated by local authorities all over. Service delivery is poor in all our local authorities, which are all run by MDCA, Alliance, councillors. You name it, service delivery is poor. They don't say anything about it, despite the fact that there's freedom of speech. Let alone they don't even protest against such occurrences. Now, when their mayor, Councillor Gomba, is arrested, allegedly, and I want to use the word allegedly because it's for the court to establish whether the corruption was committed or not. He has been arrested allegedly on allegations of corruption, illegally selling stands, I believe in Wesley. What did we find? Instead of supporting government for taking such bold moves, they are awash on social media, protesting and demanding his release. When we arrested Mufumira and she stayed for 63 days in incarceration, no protest from the MDC. That is the double standards that we do not like. Government under our leadership of Comrade E.D. Mnangagwa is taking all measures to fight corruption. But what I want to advise, and I speak here as a lawyer and also as a former Attorney General, whenever you talk about corruption, come up with evidence. What is useful to a prosecutor, to the Attorney General, Prosecutor General, to the police, is evidence, not generalized accusations, which at the end of the day, and I think I did make issued a statement some week or so ago to say we are disturbed as a party at anything that suggests catch and release practices. Cases must be investigated, prima facie case established, arrest made, then prosecution, and that prosecution should be expedited. We don't want protracted, lengthy trials. There must be finality to any prosecution. We don't want prosecutions which go on for 2 years, 3 years. It leads to disrepute to the justice delivery system. That's what ZANU-PF is saying.
Right, so thank you very much, Blessed. I see a lot of hands up, but I think for the benefit of time, comrade, may I say, reserve that question for the next time. I'm pretty sure it will still be relevant. I'm sorry for having taken that decision, but we also have to rest and also allow you guys to carry on with your work outside there. May I say on behalf of the leadership that thank you very much for coming to grace this occasion, except to also say that, the secretary, acting secretary of the Youth League to the Political, Comrade Tendai Jirao, He arrived, a bit late, but you can see he's the one in the barretta there, the green beret. He's a political member. He had also come. That tells you how serious we were about this press brief. And over and above all, the purpose is to say, don't say you were not warned. Don't say you were not advised. Don't say you were not appealed to stay at home and shy away from those planning this thing.
In the part of the country I come from, chinonzi akubaira zani ngewako. Loosely translated is that the person who gives you wise counsel is your best friend.
Thank you very much for coming.